सभी ऑप्शन की तुरंत जांच होकर हम जनता के सामने रखेंगे।
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
A very good morning. You're watching News9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. The big story that we are bringing for you this morning, a day after US President Donald Trump said that US is very close to signing that trade deal with India. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal says there will be no compromise on the interest of farmers. That's the big story on the show this morning. Also on the show, there's a new trustee in the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust. His name is Neville Tata, and he's the son of Noel Tata. We'll tell you all about the changes in the Tata Trust after the ouster of Mehli Mistry. And also on the show, we'll have, of course, live visuals coming in from the listing ceremony of Groww at the National Stock Exchange. That is the action from the IPO street. You're watching this edition of Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's begin the show with all the headlines. India will not compromise farmers, dairy and workers' interests in trade deals, says Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. Calls for fair and balanced pact with the United States as talks near conclusion. Meanwhile, India-New Zealand free trade pact talks near completion, as well as New Zealand Trade Minister Todd McClay set to visit India on Friday to give the final push. India may offer visa on arrival for medical tourists from the US and Europe, says Piyush Goyal at the CII Health Summit. Neville Tata, the son of Noel Tata, has been appointed trustee of Sir Dorabji Tata Trust as board reshuffles following Mehli Mistry stepping down. India's net direct tax collections rise 7% to almost 13 lakh crore rupees between April and November, driven by higher corporate and personal tax receipts despite slower refund payouts. NCLT issues notice on Paytm's 3.6 crore rupee insolvency petition against WinZO. Hearing adjourned to December 15th as dispute over advertising invoice validation continues. Tata Motors commercial vehicle lists today on the Bombay Stock Exchange as well as the National Stock Exchange, completing corporate split with passenger vehicle business trading independently under Tata Motors Private Vehicle Limited. RBI grants in principle approval to Junio Payments to launch UPI-linked digital wallet for children and teenagers, enabling payments without bank accounts and promoting financial literacy. Discount broker Groww's IPO is all set for the 6,600 crore rupee IPO debut today after subscription was oversubscribed more than 17 times. Big story that we're bringing for you this Wednesday morning, and I quote, India is standing firm on its trade principles. That is what Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has said, while making it clear that New Delhi will not compromise the interests of farmers, dairy producers or workers while striking trade deals. Now, speaking at a conference, Piyush Goyal said India is working towards a fair, equitable and balanced trade agreement with the United States, but not at any cost. He said, we are working for a good trade deal. It could happen tomorrow, next month or next year, but we are preparing for every possibility, unquote. Listen in to what Piyush Goyal said.
It has to be in India's interest. It has to be in the interest of everybody. My fishermen have to be protected. My textile has to be protected. My leather footwear has to be protected. But My farmers also have to be protected. The country's interest of 140 crore Indians is paramount. Grateful that I have everybody's support, but let me give you how we are thinking. We are, of course, trying to work out a fair, equitable and balanced trade deal. If that happens, it could happen any day. It could happen tomorrow. It may happen next month. It may happen next year. It may never happen. But as government, we are preparing for every contingency.
And a long range of possibilities there that Piyush Goyal has talked about, saying the deals could happen tomorrow, next week, next year, or may never happen. Meanwhile, talks between India and US have already gone through 5 rounds, and officials say another may not even be necessary. According to them, Washington now needs to respond. Meanwhile, India is also exploring new markets like Russia to boost its fishery exports, which have been hit by steep US tariffs. Now, beyond the United States, there's movement on other trade fronts too. Negotiations on the India-New Zealand free trade agreement are nearly complete, with New Zealand's Trade Minister Todd McClay all set to visit India on Friday to push talks forward. And over in Europe, the India-EU trade pact is making headway as well. EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic is expected to be in India in mid-December for the next round of discussions. Meanwhile, after months of tariff tensions, US President Donald Trump has said that now Washington and New Delhi are pretty close to sealing a new trade deal, calling it a fair deal for everyone. But how close are India and US in striking that trade deal really? Because this relationship, particularly on trade, has never been an easy one. News9's Krishna Kumar explains what's behind this fresh push, what both sides could gain, and what's still delaying the deal. Take a look.
After months of tariff tensions and back and forth negotiations, US President Donald Trump now says that the US and India are pretty close to sealing a new trade deal. He's calling it a quote-unquote fair deal for everyone. But how close are the two countries really? Because this relationship, especially on trade, has been anything but straightforward. Let's break down what's going on behind those remarks, what both countries stand to gain, and what's still holding things up. At a ceremony in Washington, Trump on the 10th of November said, and I quote here, "We're making a deal with India, much different than we had. They don't love me right now, but they will love us again." And he added, and I quote here again, "We're getting close to a fair deal. We'll bring the tariffs down at some point," unquote. Now that's quite a shift, because just a few months ago, Trump doubled tariffs on Indian goods to 50%, citing India's continued import of Russian oil. So the question is, what changed? Let's rewind a bit. Back in the month of August, the US slapped higher tariffs on Indian exports, arguing that India was helping fund Russia's war in Ukraine by buying its crude oil at discounted prices. Trump's move was not exactly subtle. Analysts saw it as a pressure tactic. The idea being squeeze India economically until it reduces those energy ties with Moscow. But while India did cut back somewhat, it never fully stopped buying Russian oil. Instead, it defended its purchases as necessary for energy security, especially for a developing economy. So when Trump now says that the tariffs will come down at some point, it suggests that Washington is rethinking that strategy, maybe realizing it's better to bring India back to the table than to push it away. Talks between India and the US have actually been going on for months. Let's take a look at the timeline. February 2025, both sides formally proposed a new bilateral trade agreement aimed at boosting trade from $191 billion to $500 billion by the year 2030. From the months of March to October, 5 rounds of talks took place, with the latest being a virtual meeting on the 23rd of October. In September, India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal traveled to Washington with senior negotiators. Mid-September, US officials visited New Delhi, calling discussions positive and forward-looking. So yes, there is progress, but there are also many sensitive issues, as Indian officials have put it. From tariffs on agricultural goods and technology exports to rules on digital trade and energy. And that's why experts believe a final deal is still some distance away. For the US, it's about rebuilding supply chains and reducing reliance on China. India fits right into that plan. It's one of the fastest growing major economies and a huge consumer market. For India, it's about access, easier entry for its goods and services into the US, especially IT, pharmaceuticals and textiles, and maybe getting some relief from those high tariffs. So yes, both sides want a deal, but they want it on their own terms. Let's not forget, Trump's remarks came during the swearing in of the new US ambassador to India. So part of this could be political signaling, projecting warmth towards India, even as the details are still being negotiated. And this is not the first time Trump's comments on India have made headlines. Early this year, he called India a quote-unquote dead economy and said that the US did very little business with it, a remark that sparked quite a reaction in New Delhi. But just weeks later, he praised Prime Minister Modi as a great man and a friend. Analysts say that's typical Trump diplomacy, transactional, unpredictable, and very public. And we can't talk about trade without talking about energy. Remember, a lot of these tariffs stemmed from India's purchase of Russian oil. Washington has long argued that these deals undercut Western sanctions on Moscow. But India has held firm, saying that it's buying what the market offers at the best price, just like any other country. And experts point out India's imports from Russia have already dropped substantially since the year 2023 as global oil flows adjusted. So how close are we to a deal? If you listen to Trump, the deal is pretty close. But if you talk to trade negotiators, not so fast. Both countries are still working through the first phase of the agreement. And even that could take months. The real challenge? Balancing domestic politics, because any big concession could be a hard sell at home for both sides. Trade experts say it's more likely that we'll see a limited early harvest deal first, something symbolic, covering a few key sectors before the full comprehensive agreement gets signed. The US and India are not just talking trade. They are deepening ties in technology, defense, and clean energy, all part of a broader push to balance China's growing influence in the region. So even if the tariff dispute drags on, both sides have bigger incentives to keep talking. As one analyst put it, this is not just about tariffs or trade volumes, it's about shaping the next decade of US-India cooperation. So yes, Trump says a deal with India is close, but in trade diplomacy, close can still mean months or even years of back and forth. Still, the tone has shifted from confrontation to cautious optimism. And that might be the real takeaway here. Because for Washington and New Delhi, a quote-unquote fair deal may be the start of something bigger than tariffs. It's about trust, strategy, and figuring out how two major economies can work together in a changing world.
All right, how two economies can work together in the changing world. That's the report by Krishna Kumar. But there are some concessions that India is making, not just to US, but even to Europe. In a bid to boost India's growing medical tourism sector, the government is exploring ways to make it easier for foreign patients to seek treatment here in India. Now, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has said India is open to considering visa-on-arrival facilities for medical tourists from select nations, and that list includes the United States and several European countries as well. Speaking at the CII Annual Health Summit, Goyal called the proposal a good idea and said it could further strengthen India's position as a global hub for affordable and quality healthcare. He noted that India already offers visa-on-arrival and e-visa options for citizens of several countries, and similar arrangements should be extended and could be extended to trusted partners where detailed investigations on inquiries are not required. Goyal also urged the Confederation of Indian Industrial CII to redefine the proposal and share concrete recommendations with the government while ensuring proper certification and security checks for eligible countries. Listen in.
About
visa on arrival that you have been articulating. Dr. Trayan has been at the forefront. Ms. Reddy is a good idea. We'll pursue that. It's, of course, one will have to look at what the certifications will be and which are the countries where we can allow that. So I'm happy to tell you that many countries we allow visa on arrival, or we allow e-visas where you just apply online and within 24 or 48 hours you get your visa. Both these can be considered, let's say, for the United States, for most of the European countries, not all by the way, for most of the countries where we have a fair amount of comfort, where detailed investigations or inquiries are not required. So let us prepare collectively. And these are the areas where maximum, or at least let's say reasonably value-based tourism can come in, or medical tourism can come in.
All right, news from India's fiscal situation and from the macroeconomic perspective. India's net direct tax collections have shown steady growth this fiscal, rising 7% to almost 13 lakh crore rupees between April 1st and November 10th, according to official data. Now, the increase was driven largely by higher corporate tax receipts, which stood at around 5.37 lakh crore rupees, up from a little under 5.10 lakh crore rupees last year. Net corporate taxes, including personal income tax, also rose to 7.19 lakh crore rupees compared to just 6.62 lakh crore rupees in the same period last year. The slower pace of tax refund payouts, which fell 18% to just 2.42 lakh crore rupees, also contributed to the higher net collections. However, security transaction tax or STT collections were marginally lower at just 35,682 crore rupees, indicating flat market activity, something that the charts have also been showing us all year. Now, gross direct tax collections before refunds amounted to about 15.35 lakh crore rupees, a modest 2.15% increase over last year. And on to corporate news now, coming from the major move in the Tata Group's governance. Neville Tata, son of Tata Trust chairman Noel Tata, has been inducted as a trustee on the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust. The trust is the largest shareholder in Tata Sons, holding nearly 28% of the conglomerate, which spans businesses from salt to software. Neville's appointment comes shortly after the long-standing tussle between two factions within the trust, one led by Noel Tata and the other by the late Ratan Tata's confidant, Mehli Mistry, who has now stepped aside without pursuing any legal challenge. Now, 32-year-old Neville Tata has been with the father's business Trent since the year 2016 and leads the popular retail chain Zudio. His appointment, widely seen as consolidating Noel Tata's influence over the trust, is for a period of 3 years. The Board of Trustees also appointed Tata Group veteran and the former MD of Titan, Bhaskar Bhatt, as well as industrialist Venu Srinivasan as trustees, with Venu Srinivasan additionally named the vice chairman of the trust. Another corporate news. The National Company Law Tribunal, or NCLT, has issued a notice on Paytm's insolvency petition against online gaming platform WinZO following allegations of non-payment of around 3.6 crore rupees for advertising services. A bench comprising Justice Jyotsna Sharma and technical member Anu Jagmohan Singh heard the matter and granted WinZO 2 weeks to file its reply. Paytm, represented by senior advocate, said the debt arose from 4 invoices under purchase orders for promoting WinZO's gaming products, including poker and rummy on Paytm's app. Now, despite the 60-day payment terms and a formal demand notice, the payments remain unpaid. WinZO argued that invoices were under internal validation, but Paytm countered, calling it a sham defense, noting that the advertisements were delivered and validation data had been provided. Paytm also suggested that the payment default coincided with the online real money gaming ban, implying inability rather than dispute. The tribunal allowed WinZO to present its defense and adjourned the case for further consideration until December 15th. And Tata Motors Commercial Vehicles Division is set to make its stock market debut today on both the BSE as well as the NSE, following approvals from the exchanges after market hours on Monday. The newly listed arm, known as Tata Motors Commercial Vehicle or TMLCV, marks the completion of Tata Motors' corporate split, with the passenger vehicle business now trading independently as Tata Motors Passenger Vehicles since October 14th. Under the approved demerger plan, shareholders of Tata Motors will receive 1 share of the commercial vehicle entity for every share held as of the record date of October 14th, ensuring ownership remains unchanged, only split equally between the two entities, that is commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles. Now, shares of Tata Motors Commercial Vehicles were credited to investors' demat accounts on October 16th but remained frozen until listing approval. So from today, the commercial vehicle stock will trade independently under the symbol Tata Motors CV, separate from the passenger vehicle business, which is TMPV. And in a move aimed at building a safe and educational digital payment platform for children and teenagers, the Reserve Bank of India has granted in-principle approval to Junio Payments Private Limited to issue prepaid payment instruments, paving the way for a UPI-linked wallet for minors. The new wallet will allow youngsters to make UPI payments without a bank account, scanning any QR code just like regular users. This aligns with the UPI Circle initiative by NPCI, letting kids use payments linked to their parents' accounts, helping foster financial literacy and real-world money management. Founded by Ankit Gera and Shankar Nath, Junio is a fintech platform designed to help children and young adults manage money responsibly. Parents can transfer funds, set spending limits, and monitor transactions in real time, while kids can earn rewards, set saving goals, and engage with gamified financial learning tools. Time for a short break. Coming up on the other side, Rohit Srivastava will be joining us with all the updates on the market mood on Dalal Street, as markets seem to have opened comfortably in the green yet again today. And also, of course, we will get live visuals from NSE on Groww's listing on the market today. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
भारत सरकार ने सभी देशवासियों के हित में टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस से जीएसटी पूरी तरह से हटाकर 0 कर दिया है। इससे टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस काफी सस्ता हो गया है। पॉलिसी बाजार पर अब 1 करोड़ का टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 400 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
बढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
जनाब, आपने भारत कनेक्ट का नाम सुना है?
नहीं, बस सर्विस है क्या?
बस सर्विस नहीं, वो 700 से ज्यादा ऐप्स पे बिल पेमेंट्स पॉसिबल बनाते हैं, जैसे अभी किया।
भाई वाह!
आप हमें जानते नहीं पर मानते जरूर हैं, हम हैं भारत कनेक्ट।
बेस्ट है सर।
पर नया क्यों?
आर्किटेक्ट जी, समथिंग स्पेशल फॉर यू। बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस देने के लिए।
ऐसा क्या है इसमें?
इसमें है एडवांस्ड क्वालिटी। 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे।
वापस करके देंगे।
वो भी फ्री। क्वालिटी पे इतना कॉन्फिडेंस, इसीलिए बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9 right here on News 9. Let's bring you all the action from Dalal Street. Markets seem to be in a good mood yet again today after yesterday's positive returns to investors. Markets have opened very comfortably in the green this morning, with the Nifty 50 now inching well above the 25,800 odd resistance level, while the Sensex is inching towards the 84,300 odd levels. Better action seen in the small cap and the mid cap space, and also the volatility seems to be in the the lower territory this morning. So good news for investors, obviously taking cues from its Asian peers as Asian markets also open comfortably healthy this morning. Meanwhile, let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map and try and see which are the movers and shakers which are adding to this green sentiment. And it seems pretty much it's the entire pack. Surprisingly, the only exception there being Bajaj Finserv, and that stock is now down about 6% or so in trade this morning. Now, Monday had posted, in fact, Bajaj Finserv had posted some solid profits on and growth projections on Monday. And following that, we saw the stock race up yesterday. But today, the mood seems to have shifted slightly. Well, right now, as we speak, Bajaj Finserv is in fact up about 1.6% or so. Meanwhile, we are also seeing great action expectedly from the energy side. In fact, ONGC is up about 2% and Reliance Industries is up about 1% or so in trade. We'll have Rohit Srivastav tell us what this really means, in fact, for all our investors. Also, the IT pack, perhaps on the back of a trade deal with the US, now as per Donald Trump, very close in the making, has seen a rally in IT stocks as well. So let's actually throw it now to Rohit Srivastav, who joins us this morning. Rohit, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Help us understand, first up, the second consecutive day where markets seem to be in a good mood, obviously buoyed to a large extent by the statement that came from Donald Trump late day before yesterday, midnight, yesterday, early morning. Beyond that, we are also seeing great momentum in energy stocks this morning. What is your read early morning right now?
So, the good news is that we have a nice gap up, and when we actually look at that on charts, gaps are, interesting points where you get support in future. It leaves behind space, giving you a sign of strength that the market is, able to hold up above and beyond a certain point. So we'll, of course, be watching this opening gap for the rest of the day. And if we don't go, say, below 25,800, then 25,800 will get established as an important support going forward. So that's a good sign. I think we're seeing it after quite some time, and it will set the stage for further gains from here, from this particular level.
All right.
So that's as far as the Nifty is concerned.
All right. Talk to us about energy stocks. We are seeing ONGC is up about 2.2% or so in trade. Reliance Industries also up almost 1% or so. What's going on in the energy space?
I think there's been a slight pickup in oil prices, though typically we would have seen oil prices, head lower. And I was anticipating that, if the, Russia, Ukraine problem gets sorted in some way, you could have one last sell-off in oil at some point of time. But the near-term pattern is set up for oil prices to head back towards $65 to $68. So that's, and we saw a positive breakout in oil prices last night, indicating that possibility. So I think that sort of got some enthusiasm into the oil stocks. Prior to that, we were probably seeing it mostly only in oil marketing companies that benefit from the lower oil prices in terms of margin. So it's been a good, interesting space, oil, but then oil prices have been relatively stable on a one-year basis. These are, of course, near-term moves that we've seen up and down in the sector. But yeah, we are seeing interest building up in that place, not just in India, but also globally. So that also plays a role, because if you look at some of the, US oil-related indices or ETFs, they've actually done pretty well on a 3 to 6 month basis. So there is a growing interest in the oil pack.
Right. So oil prices rising globally, obviously good news for oil companies, oil exploration companies. But what does it mean for consumers? Would fears of inflation creep up again, or do you think $65 to $70 a barrel is a reasonable level and is unlikely to impact inflation and hence the macro economy?
No, it won't impact inflation, because it's a narrow range. A $5-10 move in oil prices doesn't really get to inflation. It's bigger move, and it's also about speed. So when you remember, inflation is a Y-on-Y calculation.
Right.
And we look at oil prices over a 2-year period, they're actually down. So therefore, you don't get a positive read into the movement.
All right. So no fears on inflation. Talk to us about the IT sector, Rohit. Of course, trade deal with the US potentially in the making. Also, I mean, the statement coming from Donald Trump yesterday very clearly suggesting that India and US are very close, and also saying that India is going to love the US. We don't know how far that love story is going to go and how quickly we will get there. But IT stocks really rejoicing in that potential trade deal now finally in the making? Because, of course, Bihar, also the final phase of polling concluded yesterday, and the expectations were that a trade deal will be announced. But then statement coming from Piyush Goyal suggesting that there's no compromise on the interest of farmers or the dairy sector or the fisheries as well as labor-intensive sectors. So what could that deal potentially then look like if India hasn't sort of given any leeway on those counts, and hence put the story of the IT stocks and their optimism also in perspective?
So we have to go back and think that this is a lot about negotiation. Not everything that is said is going to get done, which means that you can say that I'll do all these bad things to you so that you can get people on a negotiation table. Maybe some of those things may not happen. Similar to his comments around the H1B visas overnight, that is, coming in and is defending the need for, jobs, which bring in talent. So it clearly shows that, there are two aspects to everything and they recognize it, but they did what they had to at that point of time. So when we finally get the trade deal, I think there'll be a lot of pluses and, small minuses here and there. But India's made it clear that we are not going to, let our interests go down. So I think that's why it's taken so long to negotiate this. But hope that we get closer to the end of it so it does away with the most important thing for markets, and it's uncertainty. Once you get uncertainty out of the way, markets can do what they want to.
Right.
Now, specifically on the IT sector, definitely it's been very, very oversold. And in the most recent sell-off, we did not fall to a new low compared to the bottom we actually made in April. And so that's sort of setting the stage for a good trade in the IT segment. So I think IT stocks may look like a good buy from a 3 to 4 week perspective. Sorry. But I've also given out this view in my previous interactions that when I take a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year view, I wouldn't want to be invested in IT. So they can be good trades, but they might not be long-term performers.
All right. Just stay with us for a moment, Rohit. Let's cut across now to Lalit Kestre, the founder CEO of Groww, who's speaking from the floor of the NSE ahead of listing today.
The story is about the confidence of the new India. As part of our customer engagement, all of us visit across the countries, smaller cities across the countries. And then I was at one of those events, we call them Ab India Karega Invest. And I saw a father-daughter duo sitting in the audience, and the daughter, very young, almost half the age of, the entire kind of room. And she was asking so sharp and so confident questions. And, I got a chance to meet them after our kind of event. And I could see the sharpness in her and, the confidence. But what was more important, what was more amazing was how her dad was looking at her. That's the kind of, the sign of, how India is, how confident and how young I think we are kind of moving forward. I think, and post that, I think we kind of, we keep building. And what I want to say is that I think we owe so much to so many people for building this, right? We are so grateful, first of all, our customers. When we started, as you saw in the video, we thought, in one month, if we can get 100 customers, will be very good. But guess what? We got 600 customers. And some of कुछ customers यहाँ पे आए भी हैं, काफी दूर से आए हैं. तो we are grateful to those 600 customers and all of you,
Lalit Kestre there speaking from the floor of NSE just minutes ahead of its listing on both NSE and BSE today after that IPO was subscribed more than 17 times. Rohit, thanks for staying back with us. Help us understand the story of discount broking and basically that industry which doesn't really work on very healthy margins. And for this IPO to be subscribed 17 times, it talks about optimism in India's overall financialization of savings story, which kickstarted maybe just a few months, if not a year or two before COVID had actually struck. And investment, DIY investments as a trend continues to thrive on.
Yeah, it's a big trend. I spent many years, working with brokers. So it was something that we saw happening way back in 2010, but it took off post-COVID. That is correct. COVID actually played the big role in, people starting to use these kind of platforms initially with the growth of Zerodha, and now, of course, Groww has become one of the biggest platforms out there offering these kind of services where people feel that they can quickly sign up online and create an account and trade for very, very low brokerage. One of the biggest things we would have, even when brokerage rates fell to 10 paisa, one of the biggest things we would have is big clients who trade every day will always come back and have a big debate about the brokerage that they're being charged.
Right.
So discount broking plays that role in offering people who want to trade regularly large quantities, and the costs significantly come down. And the broker itself, of course, the revenue model is very, very different. They get the earnings from the various fees that NSE collects, and they're able to generate profitability out of that. So it's a very interesting model,
right?
And here to stay, of course.
Of course, here to stay. But what do you make of those investors who may have been given that granted that allotment of the IPO? What should their strategy really be? Right now, the grey market premium suggests a 5% upside. Is this a long-term story to stay invested in, no matter what the listing price happens to be today?
So the broker listing trend, I think, has a long way to go, especially because all these are adding up to the big one, which is NSE itself. And till that happens, probably the enthusiasm towards brokerages and investing in brokers like BSE, which has already performed pretty well on the exchanges, is going to continue.
Right.
There's also the other trend, which is investors flocking to the market. We've seen the number of accounts increasing year on year, not just since COVID, but probably post 2016-17, and of course accelerated after COVID. And so it's a secular trend. We can no more say that retail investors coming into the market is a bubble. It's a secular trend which is going to continue till probably you cross 10-15% of people at large saving into equities. Right. When you see that kind of a trend, that is when we'll say that okay, it's getting big.
Right.
But if that's the size that we are looking at, which means the numbers can double, triple from here on a 10-year basis, then brokers are going to continue to grow. So it's not something that's going to end in a flash.
Understood. Of course, it's unlikely to end in a flash. But something else which had taken off pre-COVID but sort of again found its momentum during COVID and continued post-COVID is this whole digital payments sector. And as we talk about Groww's potential sort of, not potential, in fact, now confirmed listing today, there's also the Pine Labs IPO, and that IPO allotment date is also today, November 12th. And that IPO has been subscribed by a modest just 2.5 times or so, with the issue price of about 221 rupees and very little grey market premium at just about 1 rupee or so. So, Rohit, what do you make of Pine Labs? Because as compared to, let's say, a discount brokerage like Groww, this IPO has not been able to generate as much buzz, even though digital payments as an industry has taken off perhaps in equal measure, if not, more than what the discount brokerage industry has.
So the only reason that happens is that, many IPOs today are slightly pricey, even, if they are at 10 times sales, which is sort of becoming the average valuation for a lot of companies, 8 times to 10 times. It takes time for the market to absorb people who want to, quickly book gains, get out. So usually it takes 3 to 6 months for the market to give it the real valuation that it thinks. And then the price moves based on the future earnings growth trajectory, which has been pretty good for the digital platforms in general, as we have seen, whether it's the case of Paytm, Zomato and others, Nykaa, which have all gotten listed, initially seen a grind lower, and then eventually picked up because the growth momentum was still intact. So that is, I think, that is what we have been seeing as a pattern. So that's something we should keep in mind.
All right, Rohit Srivastava, thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday morning and sharing all those inputs, not just on the mood of the market, but also the IPO frenzy which is playing out, first with Groww's listing and then with Pine Labs allotment today. With that, we will slip into another short break. But before that, let's look at the global stories that we're tracking for you this morning. US President Donald Trump hails an end to the longest government shutdown in history as Congress prepares a final vote while Democrats clash internally over the compromise. With Donald Trump skipping UN's climate summit in the Amazon, California, Governor Gavin Newsom steals the spotlight, accusing the US president of abandoning the planet. He adds Trump is temporary. US and Swiss officials say talks to slash tariffs on Swiss exports to 15% could conclude within days, marking a potential milestone in Donald Trump's push for new bilateral agreements. US stocks edge higher on Tuesday as hopes of a government funding breakthrough lift investor sentiment, even as tech shares lag amid profit-taking pressure. Ukrainian investigators charge a top presidential confidant with orchestrating a massive graft scheme, deepening Kyiv's political turmoil amid the ongoing war with Russia. BBC's outgoing Director General Tim Davie urges editorial staff to defend their work as the British broadcaster grapples on how to respond to US President Donald Trump's threat to sue over a misleading edit. Google unveils its biggest ever European expansion with a $6.4 billion investment in Germany, races to close the gap in artificial intelligence. Japan's SoftBank posts $16.6 billion in quarterly profit, buoyed by soaring AI valuations, though analysts warn of a growing AI bubble in global markets. And a Turkish C-130 cargo aircraft carrying 20 people crashes en route from Azerbaijan. Emergency teams comb the wreckage in difficult terrain for survivors. These stories on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे तो अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए। IIFL फाइनेंस करता है सीधी बात।
भारत सरकार ने सभी देशवासियों के हित में हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस से GST पूरी तरह से हटाकर 0 कर दिया है। इससे हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस काफी सस्ता हो गया है। पॉलिसी बाजार पर अब 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू। policybazaar.com।
बढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
And now let's talk about Bihar. The ballot will tell the real tale. Usually, promises that are being made at the last minute to woo the voters. Mai Behan Yojana. Why Tejasvi made these 3 big promises? Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with women voters. The NDA government was the only guarantee of women's welfare in the state. Modi invoked the lawlessness that prevailed in 1990s under RJD. He said that the progress of the state during Jangal Raj was 0. Why has Congress not been able to crack? Why are they irrelevant in Bihar? What happened to the vote chori camp? What happened to the SIR camp? Are we looking at a close election victory or the margins are going to increase?
Welcome back. You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's pivot now to global stories that we're tracking for you as always. Let's first begin with the United States. US President Donald Trump has warned that the country could face an economic and national security disaster if the Supreme Court rules against his administration's use of emergency powers to impose wide-ranging tariffs. Trump's warning comes as justices raise doubts about whether a decades-old law which does not explicitly mention tariffs can legally justify such sweeping trade action by the President of the United States. Here's more.
U.S. President Donald Trump is warning of an economic and national security disaster if the Supreme Court overturns its use of emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs on nearly every country. Speaking Monday, Trump claimed the tariffs have generated trillions in tariff and investment income.
The numbers were reported so incorrectly. The real numbers are trillions of dollars have been taken in or gotten in terms of investment from the tariffs.
Trump had previously floated the idea of using tariff revenues to pay for what he calls a dividend to lower-earning Americans and repeated his plans on Monday.
We're going to issue a dividend to our middle-income people and lower-income people of about $2,000, and we're going to use the remaining tariffs to lower our debt.
During last week's oral arguments on the tariff case, Supreme Court justices cast doubt on Trump's authority to impose tariffs under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which contains no references to tariffs. Justice Amy Coney Barrett suggested it could be a mess for the courts to administer refunds to U.S. importers who have paid tariffs that were declared illegal. Trump took issue with media reports about the amount of duties collected that the government might have to repay if the Supreme Court agrees with a lower court that Trump's sweeping tariffs were illegal.
So they're not giving the right numbers. It would be an economic disaster. It would be a national security disaster if we lost the case in the Supreme Court.
It remains unclear exactly when the highest court will rule and whether companies will be entitled to refunds of more than $100 billion in IEEPA tariffs paid so far if Trump loses. The tariff debate comes as Trump's poll numbers have slipped in recent months, with growing public frustration over inflation and economic uncertainty, driving voters toward Democrats in recent elections. Yet Trump hailed what he called a decline in inflation since he took office, arguing that food prices and energy prices were coming down and inflation would be down to 1.5%, quote, pretty soon. But government data shows tariffs continue to push up costs for everyday goods, from clothing and furniture to appliances and sporting gear. Consumer prices rose 3% in the year through September, slightly higher than the previous month.
Now, Switzerland could soon clinch a breakthrough trade deal with the United States to cut U.S. tariffs on Swiss exports to 15%, possibly as early as Thursday or Friday, according to officials familiar with the talks. More details in this next report.
Switzerland could score a deal to lower tariffs on its exports to the US by the end of this week. That's according to a source on Tuesday. They said the tariff rate could be lowered to 15% from the 39% it's been at since August. The source added the deal could arrive by Thursday or Friday or early next week. But they warned an agreement wasn't certain until President Donald Trump gives his approval. The US tariffs currently placed on Switzerland are among the highest duties Washington has put on another country. It's threatened Swiss access to one of its biggest markets for its goods by making its products more expensive than other regions with lower duties. Industries affected include Swiss powerhouses like precision machinery, watches and chocolate. The Swiss Economic Affairs Ministry has been leading negotiations with Washington. It refused to comment on the ongoing discussions on Tuesday. Trump further said earlier this week he was working on a deal to lower tariffs on goods from Switzerland. Swiss officials have pitched a package of investment pledges and proposals. They aim to lower the US deficit in hopes of getting an agreement. Swiss media reported a group of the country's business leaders also met Trump in the White House last week to discuss the impact of tariffs on their operations. They reportedly presented him with a specifically engraved gold bar and a Rolex watch. News of a potential deal sent shares in Swiss luxury watch brands Richemont and Swatch Group higher on Tuesday.
The Japanese multinational Sony has raised its full-year profit forecast by 8% to nearly $9.5 billion, citing a smaller-than-expected hit from U.S. tariffs and continued strength in its entertainment and semiconductor divisions. The company, once best known for household electronics, has now become an entertainment powerhouse. Take a look.
Sony raised its operating profit forecast for the year by 8% on Tuesday. The Japanese giant now foresees $9.5 billion in gains for the 12 months ending in March. It cited a smaller than expected impact from US tariffs and showed confidence about the strength of its entertainment and chips businesses. Operating profit in the July to September quarter rose a tenth to $2.8 billion. That after its chips businesses and its music unit, which includes anime, saw higher sales. The conglomerate was once best known for household electronics, but it's become an entertainment powerhouse and bets on the growth of anime. Profits at Sony's games business fell in the second quarter after the company booked impairment losses from the Destiny 2 video game. The firm sold 3.9 million units of its PlayStation 5 during the quarter, in a slight rise from the same period a year earlier. Sony is also a leading manufacturer of image sensors used in smartphones. It said sales of large sensors boosted its chips unit during the quarter. Sony further updated its outlook on the impact of US trade tariffs for the financial year to $324 million. That's down from the more than $450 million projection it made in August. Sony shares closed up 5.5% following the earnings release.
Well, staying with corporate Japan, SoftBank Group reported a more than twofold jump in second quarter profit to $16.6 billion, driven by valuation gains from its investments in ChatGPT maker OpenAI. But there are growing concerns among market watchers about a so-called AI bubble. As many reports suggest, Sam Altman-run company has reported losses in October, even though its valuation has risen throughout the year. More details in this report.
SoftBank Group scored big from investing in artificial intelligence during the latest quarter. The Japanese firm said Tuesday net profit more than doubled to $16.6 billion from July to September. It was driven by gains in its holdings of ChatGPT maker OpenAI. The number for the period was well above analyst forecasts and from a year ago. SoftBank's Vision Fund unit posted an investment rise of close to $22.7 billion. It mostly came from the group's holding in OpenAI, which hit around $14 billion for the quarter. It shows the all-in bet on OpenAI by SoftBank head Masayoshi Son appears to have paid off. SoftBank has scored big out of a wave of investment in AI infrastructure like data centers and frontrunners in the tech's development like OpenAI. The results also means SoftBank has more money to employ in its AI-related spending. Its total investment in OpenAI is expected to reach $34.7 billion by the end of this year. But there are growing concerns among market watchers about a so-called AI bubble. Some fear the large sums invested by leading firms may not bring the high profits to justify the spending. A source also told Reuters in October losses are mounting at OpenAI, although its valuation has risen throughout the year. SoftBank agreed in March to lead a funding round of up to $40 billion in the company at a valuation of $300 billion. The firm also stepped up fundraising activities in the quarter by issuing bonds, taking out bridging loans and selling equity holdings. It includes the sale of the rest of its shares in tech giant Nvidia for $5.83 billion.
Vodafone will raise its dividend for the first time in 8 years after posting stronger earnings and returning to revenue growth in Germany, its largest market. Now, this comes years after the telecom giant slashed its dividend by 40% in 2019 when the cost of buying 5G spectrum in Europe caused its debt to grow. Take a look.
Vodafone shareholders are due to get their first rise in its dividend in 8 years. It comes after the mobile operator upgraded its earnings outlook on Tuesday, largely thanks to top-line growth in Germany. The firm also said it had made a fast start in bringing together the Vodafone and 3 networks in Britain. Vodafone completed the merger with Hutchison's 3 in May, becoming the country's biggest operator. Shares in the British company are trading at 2.5-year highs and rose 5% in early trade Tuesday. Looking ahead, the company said it expected to deliver the upper end of its guidance ranges for adjusted core earnings for the full year. That's between $13 billion and $13.4 billion. Vodafone's CEO said based on stronger performance, it would introduce a new progressive dividend policy with an expected increase of 2.5% this financial year. It comes after the firm slashed its dividend by 40% in 2019, when the cost of buying 5G spectrum in Europe caused its debt to grow.
Moving on to Alphabet now. Well, Google has unveiled its biggest ever investment in Germany on Tuesday, pledging $6.4 billion for a new data center and as many as 9,000 jobs as Europe seeks to catch up in the AI race. It comes after AI chip juggernaut Nvidia and Deutsche Telekom last week announced plans for a high-tech hub in Germany aimed at helping industry speed up adoption of AI. The cash injections are a boost for Germany, whose economy is struggling, as well as Europe as it seeks to catch up with AI leaders, that's the United States and China. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is seeking to attract more foreign investment to boost the digital sector, with prospects for the country's traditional industrial titans increasingly bleak. Now from NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang confirming very strong demands for the company's Blackwell AI chips to a UK startup developing a low-energy metal refining process. We bring you a roundup of the biggest tech stories of the week. Take a look.
From precious chip deals to precious metals, this is Tech Weekly. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said the company has seen very strong demand for its advanced Blackwell chips, and it's producing the semiconductors with the help of TSMC's wafers. Huang even said NVIDIA's success wouldn't be possible without the Taiwanese firm's support on wafers. NVIDIA made history last month when it became the first company to reach a $5 trillion market value. Apple won't release the next version of the iPhone Air in the fall of 2026 as previously planned. That's according to sources familiar with the matter. The company launched the iPhone Air in 2025 as a thinner and lighter alternative within its iPhone portfolio. The model came with some trade-offs in terms of battery size and camera features. CEO Elon Musk said Tesla will likely have to build a chip fab to make AI semiconductors, and he said the EV maker could work with US firm Intel. Tesla is designing its fifth-generation AI chip to power its autonomous ambitions. Musk raised the issue at the company's annual meeting.
As far as I can see, the only option is to go build some, very big chip fab.
The AA Driving School Academy says trainee driving instructors are turning to virtual reality to master complex road scenarios in a safe, controlled environment. Using Meta's Quest 3 headsets, the driving school can introduce instructors to modern hazards, including a higher number of cyclists and scooters. UK startup DesCycle is dissolving discarded tech using deep eutectic solvent chemistry to pull out precious and critical metals at room temperature. It's an alternative to energy-hungry smelting, and DesCycle says the liquids selectively dissolve metals from shredded circuit boards and other e-waste, while leaving most non-metal components behind.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Morning Brief at 9. Thank you so much for watching, but news continues right here on News9, so stay tuned.
आरजेडी ने कांग्रेस की कनपट्टी पर कट्टा रखकर सीएम पद चोरी कर लिया।
आजकल जो सरकार के लिए आता है अंड बंड बोलता है, तो वो सबको जरा कहिएगा कोई काम किया है जी?
जो 20 साल में ये सरकार नहीं कर पाई है, 20 महीने में तो